rich as Croesus. The phrase has survived 2,500 years. Croesus was king of Lydia, the wealthiest human being alive in the 6th century BC. His metallurgists invented the world's first pure gold and silver coins. He could buy anything in the known world. But when he faced the most consequential decision of his reign, whether to strike first against the rising Persian Empire, he didn't trust his generals or his treasury. He sent envoys to a priestess sitting on a tripod, breathing volcanic gas, to ask a god what to do. The god answered. Croesus heard exactly what he wanted to hear. The prophecy was perfectly accurate, just not in the way he assumed. To understand how this prophecy went wrong, we need to understand the man who asked and why. Lydia sat in what is now Western Turkey. Its capital, Sardis, straddled the Pactolus River, a river that carried flecks of gold in its current. To the west, Greek coastal cities like Miletus and Ephesus paid tribute to Croesus. To the east, beyond the river Halys, the Persian Empire was swallowing kingdoms whole. Croesus sat between a culture he admired and an empire he feared. The Pactolus didn't just carry water, it carried wealth. For centuries, people had penned electrum from the riverbed, a natural alloy of gold and silver. Electrum made decent coins, but every nugget had a different ratio of gold to silver. No one could be sure what a coin was truly worth. Croesus's metallurgists solved this. They developed a technique to separate electrum into pure gold and pure silver, then struck coins of each, standardized, reliable, trustworthy. This was a monetary revolution. For the first time in history, a merchant could hold a coin and know exactly what it was worth. The wealth this generated was so legendary that, rich as Croesus, entered the language and never left. But wealth cannot solve every problem. To Croesus's east, Cyrus the Great had already conquered the Medes and was building the largest empire the world had ever seen. The river Halys marked the boundary between Lydian and Persian territory for now. Croesus faced a dilemma as old as statecraft itself: strike first and risk igniting the very war he dreaded, or wait and risk being overwhelmed by an enemy growing stronger every year. He needed guidance, not from his generals, but from a higher authority, so Croesus did what any powerful king in the Greek-adjacent world would do. He consulted the god Apollo at Delphi. Croesus lavished gifts on the temple: golden bowls, silver vessels, a lion of pure gold. His envoys climbed the slopes of Mount Parnassus, underwent purification rituals, and paid enormous fees. Then they descended into the temple's inner chamber. There, above a fissure in the earth, sat the Pythia, the priestess who served as Apollo's voice. She perched on a bronze tripod, holding a laurel branch and a phial, a shallow dish of sacred water. From the geological fault beneath her rose vapors the Greeks called the pneuma. In this trance-like state, she spoke the god's words. But before the envoys ever reached her, they passed an inscription carved above the temple entrance: Gnothi auton, know thyself. The god answered, if Croesus crosses the Halys, he will destroy a great empire. Croesus received this message and saw exactly what he expected. He was the wealthiest king alive, commanding the finest cavalry in Asia. Of course, the great empire meant Persia. The oracle had confirmed his plan. He mobilized his army. He crossed the Halys. He attacked, and he destroyed a great empire, his own. Cyrus defeated Croesus, captured Sardis, and absorbed Lydia into the Persian Empire. The prophecy had been perfectly, literally true. The oracle did not deceive Croesus. Croesus deceived himself. He never stopped to consider that the great empire might be Lydia. The inscription at the temple entrance, know thyself, had given him the interpretive key before he ever asked the question. He walked right past it. To understand why Lydia's fall set a much larger conflict in motion, we need to understand what kind of empire Lydia was. Lydia was a tribute empire. Pay your annual taxes, supply soldiers when called upon, and otherwise govern yourselves. The Greek cities under Croesus, Miletus, Ephesus, and others kept their own customs, their own laws, even their own democratic governments. Rome, centuries later, operated a fundamentally different model. Rome imposed forums, temples, emperor worship, Latin law, and imperial coinage stamped with the emperor's face. Rome remade subject peoples in its own image. Lydia did not. This distinction matters because many people assume all ancient empires worked the same way. They did not. Lydian rule was light by any material measure, and the Greek cities resented it anyway. The reason lies in a single Greek word, eleutheria, freedom, but not in the modern individual sense. Eleutheria meant collective self-governance. No outside power holds authority over the city. Even if the tribute was modest and the overlord lenient, the mere fact of subjugation violated everything Greeks believed about political life. When Persia absorbed Lydia and inherited control of those same Greek coastal cities, it inherited this resentment too. Those cities carried their fierce attachment to Eleutheria straight into rebellion, and that rebellion became the Greek-Persian Wars. The chain of events runs clearly. Around 600 BC, the Lydian dynasty conquered the Greek coastal cities of Asia. In the 560s, Croesus refined electrum into pure gold and silver coins, building the greatest fortune in the ancient world. In 546 BC, he consulted Delphi, crossed the Halys, and lost everything. Lydia fell to Cyrus. Persia then absorbed the Greek cities of the Aegean coast. By 499, those cities erupted in the Ionian Revolt, and by 490, the Persian Wars had begun, the clash at Marathon. Croesus's miscalculation was the first domino. Croesus had everything, wealth, power, the ear of the greatest oracle in the ancient world, and still failed because he could not see past his own assumptions. The Delphic Oracle did not deceive him. It reflected his question back at him, and he interpreted the reflection through the lens of his own confidence. Know thyself was not philosophy for philosophy's sake. It was survival advice. We still say, rich as Croesus. We still wrestle with ambiguous intelligence before going to war. We still struggle to hear warnings that challenge what we already believe. This story is the beginning of the Greek-Persian Wars. And it starts not with armies, but with a question asked in a dark chamber, and an answer that meant two things at once.